So we're going to go into segment 1, and I'm going to pass it over to the amazing August.
All right, everyone, let's get this show on the road. So, our first segment comes from Portugal, and it was written October 3rd on the Associated Press. So, the clergy of the Catholic Church, unsurprisingly, has been caught in another scandal and has been found to shelter and give apologies for another case of sexual misconduct. And this time it's a Nobel Peace Prize winning bishop. And to be honest, he has a very long name. So if you want to know the bishop's full name, go ahead and check out the link that'll be in the description for the article. But yeah, in the mid to late 90s in 1996, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. But in the 90s, there was also the sexual misconduct allegations against him. So I want to go ahead and give it over to Cindy to hear your thoughts.
So Wikipedia has an actual listing of the sexual abuse cases in the Catholic Church, and that's just the Catholic Church, not the other religions. As of time of writing, there are 36 countries listed. So multiply these 36 by, I don't know, 500, 1,000, 2,000 cases in every country. That's a lot. So I don't even know where to begin because we've been through this a dozen times already on the non-profits. Every month it seems like we have something like that, uncovering of a scandal, sex abuse. But what struck me was this sentence in the article. Senior Catholic leaders apologized over the weekend for the hurt caused by decades of alleged abuse and cover-up. Usually they go hand to hand. Currently estimated number about around 400 cases, with the Archbishop of Lisbon begging the faithful to not lose faith in the church. Because that's what's more important for them, right? Their power. They're literally begging people to stay despite having abused kids. Let that sink in your mind for a second and realize what's happening here. We're abusing your kids, but please keep believing in us. Um, that's extremely high despair from this criminal entity. And I wish we had Teo Alateo tonight to talk about this, because he's always fired up when we talk about this wonderful entity. But yeah, Richard, what do you have to say?
Teo loves the Catholic Church. He's awesome when he talks about the Catholic Church. Yeah, don't Catholics get bored of apologising over sexual abuse cases? I mean, you touched on it there, Cindy, when you said it seems like every month there's another case comes out. It's like every month in the Catholic Church is abuse month. The Archbishop of Lisbon, Manuel Clemente, or Clement, like you said, begged people not to lose faith in the church. I've got a fantastic idea. It's wonderful. It's groundbreaking. It's revolutionary. Don't sexually abuse people. It works wonders for public relations. I don't understand why they do it. It's bizarre. Be confident, he said, that for our parts we will do our best with respect to the law and the gospel. Forgive me for not taking you seriously, when the Catholic Church's usual response to abuse cases is to move the abuser to a different area and to try their best to save face by issuing off-arsed responses. And that is exactly what they've done in this case. As soon as I started reading this article and saw that, I predicted, they call me a prophet. This show's called The Non-Prophets, but I am a prophet in this regard. I just knew that this guy was going to have been moved around, and that's exactly what turned out to happen. August.
All right, so I have a couple of things here that struck me. I want to point out the fact that I feel like for so many years they've just denied, 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 denied. So how much evidence has to be present for them to finally go, okay, yes, the allegations might have some water to them, might have some weight to it. Therefore, now we have to publicly apologize. And I think it's overwhelming, the idea that they're saying there's about 400 cases, which obviously even one is too many. But when I look at that number, I think about all the cases that have gone unreported and all of the cases that they aren't talking about, all the cases that they don't have enough evidence to need to apologize for. So that struck me. But also, I can't be surprised, not just because the Catholic Church has done this so many times, but because when you have a religion that pushes this purity culture of no sex before marriage, and then you have clergy members who are meant to stay celibate their entire lives, what the fuck did you think was going to happen? And I also find it pretty funny, and by funny I mean completely abhorrent, that they are so outwardly against homophobia or homosexuality and being gay. They are homophobic. And yet these scandals, while there are some girls in the scandals, I would say the overwhelming majority that we've seen are young boys, which I think is just, I don't have the word for it. I guess ironic in a very dark and sinister way, and very, very hypocritical. So it's not, this is not okay. And I don't want it to get swept under the rug like it does so many other times. Cindy, you have anything else?
I'm not sure that it's a case that there's just a larger proportion of gay bishops or gay priests or clergy, however you want to phrase it, in the Catholic Church. I think it's just a case that they're so repressed, and the demographic is that they tend to be around young boys more. We see it in other religions. It's not exclusive to Catholicism. We see abuse in other religions, and we see in Buddhism, for example, we have the same thing when guys who were supposed to be celibate come into contact with women when they're teaching in the West, and a lot of abuse cases there. But it's I don't know. It really frustrates me. The excuses frustrate me. One of the excuses given for Bishop Balo was that we stand with Bishop Balo because we realize as a human being, Balo has weaknesses or mistakes like others. We cannot ignore his kindness and what he has fought for the people of East Timor. Now let that sink in for a moment. You know, how kind must he have seemed to his victims when he was sexually abusing them? They don't think. Why would you make a statement like that? Quite rightly, and despite it's being defended by members of the church, this has caused spotlight to fall onto the church authorities. And the article tells us that the United Nations and advocates for victims have called on Francis to authorize an investigation into the circumstances surrounding Balo's 2002, I'm going to say that several times.
I was going to mention that as
when
well.
He was 20 years shy of the normal retirement age, and why he was sent to Mozambique. It couldn't possibly be, bear with me, that he was sent away instead of the church reporting him to the police and defrocking him, because that's what they do in almost every single case of one of them being caught abusing children, could it? Possibly?
What?
At all?
That's unheard of.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes. Cindy, what do you think?
Yeah, every time I hear one of those stories, I think about this very specific character in Victor Hugo's Notre Dame of Paris, Frollo, the priest. It's exactly what you were saying. He can't control his lust he feels to this young woman, and I think this is the same thing. They have those natural urges. They can't let them go because of this stupid religion that contradicts itself, by the way, because the Bible says that a priest should be married because he can't um, be asked uh, to hold a parish if he cannot hold his own house. So there's that. But yeah, it's this we we have this abhorrence in our society towards every time people try to explain um, sexual abusers' behavior towards children. Every time you see in the media, in courts, every time the lawyers are trying to explain why he is like this, people just shut down the discussion. And here, when it's a priest, then everyone tries to find excuses for them.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and if I know everybody's thinking the same thing when he was moved, and he was moved to Mozambique, and when he was moved to Mozambique, bear in mind the church we suspect had knowledge of what he'd been doing. He did have access to children, and the church apparently saw fit to let him teach children and give retreats to young people. Because let's not forget, at least one of them stands by him and cannot ignore his kindness. So, to be fair to the church, after allegations reached the Vatican, I don't know why I'm being fair to the church, but I am. In 2019, they did prevent him from having contact with minors or East Timor. It only took them 17 years to do it, and only after what the article calls a backdrop of revelations published by a lay committee looking into historic church sexual abuse cases in Portugal. It's always somebody else who whistleblowers on them. They never see fit to do it themselves. They never report it to the police themselves, no matter what the crime. And this is what's so frustrating about it. The article tells us that since January, it has unearthed around 400 alleged cases. And it seems like a recurrent theme when we discuss the Catholic Church that they move their abusers on, often without limiting their contact to children and only to make an effort to put more stringent controls in place when the public spotlight is on them. Some might call it damage limitation. August, what do you think?
Well, nothing good about this, but I just think it's so horrific. Just these are people that are in power. These are people that have control, and they are coming after arguably the most vulnerable, the ones that are told to be quiet and obey and just do what you're told. Don't argue, don't fight back. And so what are we teaching these kids? And yet these are the same people that will then say that drag lunch hours or reading drag story time is tarnishing and ruining our children. But yet when things like this happen, you never see the outcry. It's more of a, the actual good people who are in this church are making excuses for it. And I think that's the kind of thing that religion will push good people to do. Because good people can be good people, but then it takes something as controlling and indoctrinating and poisoning your brain to make you make excuses for child abuse, and not only child abuse, but sexual child abuse, which I can't think. Sexual misconduct is such a different type of violation in my head, just because there's no justification. There's none. Even if, you can harm someone in self-defense. And even then we say, okay, well, what was the context? There is zero context. Let me make this very, very clear. There is literally zero context where an adult, or even just anyone assaulting, but especially an adult, and especially an adult in a higher position, in a position of authority, using that power to go against these innocent kids. And then they're making these situations where a lot of Catholic if I remember correctly, a lot of the Catholics have the confessions, and I have a feeling that that's probably where a lot of that happens, because it's the private little thing, and oh, don't tell anyone. And so it just infuriates me that this is happening, and the good people that are in that church are making excuses. And I'm not talking about the people in the higher ups. They are past any sort of redemption at this point. I'm talking about the regular common people that are making excuses for the Catholic Church, and then turning around and saying that someone wearing different clothing in drag shows is a problem, or saying, hey, if you like someone of the same sex, gender, whatever you want to say, if that's okay. That's okay. And we're promoting love, and yet we are the ones destroying the children, the ones who want a secular society. I can't.
Yeah, it's never a good thing. I think anybody, this is advice to anybody out there, not just Catholics. If you find yourself turning a blind eye whenever anything you find immoral is happening, then you need to have a good heart. That is a point. That is a trigger point. You should say to yourself, "What am I doing here?
It's a
What
blinding
can
red
I do
flag.
better within myself?" Cindy.
Yeah, without the religious influence, the Vatican, which is the political branch of the Catholic Church, has zero power on the world scene. So we need to push against all those all those local organizations in every country, and push them slowly to reduce their power, which they don't really use well anyway. So whether it's to say, hey, Africa, don't use condoms because that's wrong, or anything else, we
Yeah,
need
that's
to
not a.
reduce.
Sorry, Cindy, go on.
Yeah, no, we need to reduce the Vatican's influence, and the only way to do that is to fight all those local Catholic churches, and kick them where it hurts.
Yeah, and I do want to mention something that Richard said earlier. I believe you said that the United Nations was calling on the victims to have Pope Francis authorize an investigation. And I feel like we kind of just skated on from that point. No offense to you, Richard, but I've been sitting here thinking about that, and I'm like, we have to get permission? Why do we need his permission? Am I reading this wrong? Do we have to get the person who's at the head to, I mean, it's like trying to say, well, chief of police, you have to authorize us investigating your policeman. Or we could just do it because there's probable cause here. I mean, regardless of the United States or anything, there's probable cause to think, I think that's an understatement, there's probable cause. So why would we need the Pope's permission? Of course, he's probably not going to do it. This is like internal investigation. That's not going to come up with anything. Am I reading that wrong, Richard, please?
Tap. I think it's called tap dancing around religious sensibilities. And the Catholic Church are enormously powerful and enormously wealthy. And I suspect somewhere along those lines, I wouldn't go out on the limb and say this is definite, but I suspect somewhere along the lines, some of that wealth and some of that power might have a small influence in global politics. And, I think when organizations are that big, they feel that they have to kind of take gentler steps and ask for permission. And let's not forget that this guy, this abuser, no less, won a Nobel Prize. August, did you want to say something about that?
Well, the people that have won that prize have been, at least probably most of them, have been very deserving. I know that Martin Luther King Jr. has received that same award. So we're putting Martin Luther King Jr. Needs no introduction, needs no explanation. We're putting him on the same level as this child sexual predator. Is that what we're doing now? Well, and also apparently Mother Teresa is one as well. And so maybe that's not the best peaceful prize, but that prize means nothing to me now, because what kind of peace are you promoting from touching little boys? From
I
molesting and
didn't see anywhere
traumatizing
in the
little boys?
article that said that the prize had been stripped either. I don't know if any of you two caught that.
I didn't see anything.
Yeah, I think it was on the process of being stripped or just being stripped. I don't remember, but
Why
as
is
it
there a
should, as
process
it
of
should.
stripping a prize from a Nobel Peace Prize? Or, well, no, a Nobel Prize. I'm sure it wasn't the Peace Prize, but a Nobel Prize from a sexual predator. There shouldn't be a process for that. It should
Richard,
just fucking happen.
Richard, I'm so sorry to say that this article says many times that it was specifically a Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh, was it? Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I was
It says it. I'm just
inadvertently
like,
correct.
I just want to make sure that people know, like, no hate to you, Richard. I appreciate everything you do
No,
here,
that's fine.
and it's great chatting with you today. But oh my gosh, yeah,
Being
it's
right when
specifically
you're
a
wrong
Peace Prize.
about being
Specifically a
right
Peace
is
Prize.
always something that's a very special talent.
And I'm so sorry. I get upset at stuff like this, especially when it has to do with stuff that is inexcusable, unexplainable, and absolutely abhorrent. I just,
Yeah. Cindy, final thoughts on this segment.
See you next time.
oh no.
Yeah. Okay,
Sad but
August.
true. Stop touching little boys and girls, and keep your hands to yourself. I think we learned that in like kindergarten, our first year of school, not to touch people. And then especially as an adult of power, maybe if you don't want scandals that you have to constantly apologize for, maybe you should just, like you said, Richard, it's super easy, costs $0. Stop touching children.
Yeah, respecting people's boundaries is something you should learn at a very, very early age.